I have beaten cancer, buried my wife, and been abandoned by my only child. Not necessarily in that order, and not, I should say, without consequence to the party responsible. This is not a story about forgiveness. Forgiveness is for people who asked for it. This is a story about what happens when a 70-year-old man with nothing left to lose decides to start telling the truth. Welcome back to Dad's Sweet Revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, every villain in these stories thought they were the smartest person in the room. They were not. Subscribe so you never miss a story. My wife of 41 years died on a Wednesday morning in March, and the house never sounded the same after that. Miriam Graves passed quietly, which was exactly the way she would have wanted it. No fuss, no dramatic orchestral swell, no weeping relatives draped across the furniture like wet laundry. She'd fought ovarian cancer for 16 months, and in the end, the cancer won. But she never complained. Not once. That was Miriam, the kind of woman who apologized to the nurses for bleeding on their scrubs. I held her hand until it went still. I drove home alone through the Spanish moss and the thick savanna air, sat down in our kitchen in my good coat, and stared at the percolator for 3 hours because I didn't know what else to do, and because the percolator, at least, didn't require anything from me. Her name is on everything in this house. The monogrammed dish towels she special ordered from a catalog. The handwriting on the index cards tucked inside every cookbook. Little annotations in her loopy cursive. Things like, add more garlic. Walter never notices, and do not let Walter near the roux. The photograph on the mantel where she's laughing at something I said that wasn't even particularly funny. I've always suspected she was laughing at me rather than with me. I've chosen to find that charming. I'm Walter Graves. I'm 70 years old. I live in a 4-bedroom Victorian on Oleander Street in Savannah, Georgia, a house Miriam and I bought in 1988, when the neighborhood was what realtors generously called transitional, and what everyone else called cheap. We stayed anyway, shot our roots down deep, raised our son, Daniel, within these walls, watched him grow from a squalling infant into a reasonably functional adult, which I will go ahead and count as a success, given what came later. Daniel was the first person I called, 14 months after Miriam died, when my world cracked open for the second time. It was a Tuesday morning in early October, one of those Savannah mornings that tricks you. The air light and golden, the azaleas doing their best, the whole city looking like it had been art directed by someone who wanted you to feel at peace. I'd been to my urologist, Dr. Anand, over at Memorial Health, 3 weeks prior for what I'd been telling myself was routine. Some discomfort, some urgency, nothing catastrophic. Men of a certain age, I reminded myself. The plumbing ages like everything else. Dr. Anand had ordered a biopsy after my PSA levels came back elevated. I'd told myself it was nothing. I was very convincing. The call came while I was sitting on the back porch with my coffee and a book I wasn't really reading. A nurse, careful voice not unkind, the particular cadence of someone trained to deliver bad news without creating a scene, told me Dr. Anand needed to see me that afternoon. That tone, you know it before you know it. Stage 3 prostate cancer. Aggressive subtype. Treatment needed to begin within 6 weeks. I sat in Dr. Anand's examination room for a long time after he left. The walls were painted a shade of beige, so aggressively neutral it felt like a philosophical statement. There was a laminated poster about prostate health, featuring a man in his 50s, smiling in a way no man who has just heard the word Bopsy has ever smiled. I studied that poster for a while. I found it unhelpful. Stage 3 prostate cancer, locally advanced, meaning the tumor had grown beyond the prostate itself, but hadn't yet packed its bags and gone touring through my other organs. The treatment protocol involved external beam radiation, 5 days a week, for 8 weeks, and androgen deprivation therapy, ADT, which works by slamming your testosterone levels through the floor. Because prostate cancer runs on testosterone the way Daniel ran on my credit card through most of his 20s. The side effects of ADT are, to put it diplomatically, a full and complete humiliation, fatigue like you've been sedated, hot flashes, mood instability, bone density loss, and a particular variety of loneliness that comes from your body turning against you in ways that are both deeply personal and entirely impossible to explain at a dinner party. I sat in the parking garage for 25 minutes. Then I called Daniel. He picked up on the second ring, which I note only because it would be one of the last times he demonstrated that level of responsiveness. Dad. Hey, what's going on? 70 years of engineering have trained me to stay calm when structures fail. I've got some news. Bad news. I just left Dr. Anand's office. They found cancer. Prostate cancer. Stage 3. I need to start treatment soon. A pause. The particular kind of pause that isn't about processing. It's about calculating. Wow, Dad. That's a lot. Yes, I agreed. It is. Are they sure? I mean, did they explain all the options? We talked at length. Radiation and hormone therapy to start. Possibly surgery depending on response. Silence. I could hear his fiancée, Elise, somewhere in the background. The sound of a life that did not currently include me. Dad, I don't even know what to say. The timing on this is just terrible. I remember thinking, there is no good timing for cancer. It doesn't check your Google Calendar. It doesn't care that you have venue deposits. Elise and I are completely underwater right now. The wedding is in 6 months, and it's basically consumed everything. The venue, the catering, the photographer, the florist, the invitation suite. And I'm telling you, Dad, it's like a part-time job on top of a full-time job. I just can't take on anything else right now. Something in me went very still. Not cold, not angry, just still. Like the moment before you realize the beam has failed and the whole structure is coming down. I'm not asking you to take it on, I said. I'm telling you I have cancer. And I hear you, Dad. I do. But you're the most capable person I know. You've got your people down there. What about your neighbor, that retired teacher? Or the guys from your church? My neighbor at the time barely knew my name. The guys from my church were a rotating cast of septuagenarians with their own medical calendars. Daniel. Dad, I love you, but this is genuinely the worst possible time. Can we talk in a few weeks? Once the venue contracts are finalized. Now, I want to pause here and give Daniel some credit, because fairness demands it. He did say he loved me. He did suggest we talk in a few weeks. These are, technically, words. They are not nothing. They are, however, very close to nothing when your father is sitting in a parking garage with a cancer diagnosis and shaking hands. But credit where it's due. Sure, I said. We'll talk in a few weeks. I did not beg. I did not cry. I did not call back. I simply made a very quiet note, the kind of note that doesn't go on paper but goes somewhere deeper. And I drove home through the golden savannah afternoon, and I started figuring out how to do this alone. What followed, over the next 6 weeks, was the particular surprise of discovering that alone was a more flexible concept than I'd assumed. My neighbor, Pauline Hayes, a retired school librarian from 3 houses down, who I had previously known primarily as the woman with the impressive herb garden, appeared at my door 10 days after my diagnosis with a cast-iron pot of she-crab soup and an expression that did not invite argument. I heard, she said simply. I'm leaving this. Don't thank me. I tried to thank her. She waved it off as though I'd attempted to tip her for breathing. Pauline would go on to leave food on my porch twice a week for the next 8 months, with the quiet consistency of a person who has decided something and sees no reason to discuss it further. Tuesday dinners, Thursday lunches. Once, a full Sunday roast that made me sit down at the kitchen table and eat like a man who still had somewhere to be. Then there was Harry Coleman, 67, retired marine electrician, member of my Thursday morning men's group at First Baptist, and owner of what I can only describe as a catastrophic sense of humor. Harry drove me to radiation appointments, 53 sessions over 10 weeks, including 2 weeks the cancer did not observe as holiday. Harry told jokes the entire 40-minute round trip without once repeating himself, which was either a gift or a curse, and most days felt like both. I looked forward to those jokes with an intensity that probably should have concerned me. I started treatment in November. My radiation oncologist was Dr. Mosley at the Curtis and Elizabeth Anderson Cancer Institute. Thorough, direct, with the particular warmth of someone who has built their entire career around delivering terrible news as gently as possible, and has gotten very, very good at it. On the mornings the fatigue was so heavy I couldn't get up. I thought about Miriam, about how she'd packed a book and her reading glasses for every treatment like it was an errand, about how she never once asked me to come along, because she didn't want to be a burden, and I, God help me, let her not ask, let her go alone more times than I should have. I think about that still. I thought about it a lot in those cold November mornings on the way to radiation, with Harry Coleman in the driver's seat telling a joke about a priest and a pelican that went on for 11 full minutes. Now, here is where I need to tell you about the phone call. The one from Daniel, The other one, not the cancer call, the wedding call. 3 months into treatment, January, I was deep in hormone therapy, deeply fatigued, deeply uninterested in participating in civilized society. I received a call from my son, not to check on my PSA levels, not to ask whether I was eating, to ask, in his warmest and most careful voice, whether I'd be willing to contribute $40,000 toward the wedding. $40,000. It's the venue, Dad. The one Elise loves. It's a restored antebellum plantation outside of Bluffton. And the all-inclusive package it's a lot. But it's important to her. And with everything, I just thought, you have the savings? And honestly, Dad, it's what Mom would have wanted. Miriam, who clipped coupons until 2019. Miriam, who considered spending more than $40 on a restaurant dinner an act of mild moral failure. Miriam, whose idea of a venue was wherever everyone can fit and there's enough food. I told Daniel I would think about it. I thought about it for approximately 4 minutes. Then I called my attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Delacroix, who has handled my affairs for 15 years and who receives bad news with the calm of someone who has heard everything twice. I told her what I wanted to do and why. She did not flinch. She said, I'll have the documents ready by Thursday. I also did not attend the wedding. I received an invitation, thick cardstock, gold foil, the kind that cost more per envelope than my first car payment. And I set it on the kitchen counter and looked at it for 10 days. By the time April arrived and Daniel married Elise at what I imagine was a very beautiful restored antebellum plantation in Bluffton, I was in the middle of hormone therapy and running on fumes, and I had not received a single phone call, text message, or carrier pigeon from my son since the $40,000 ask. What I did receive in December was a Christmas card. It had a golden retriever on the front, wearing a Santa hat. Inside, Happy Holidays, Walter. Elise and Daniel. My name was spelled correctly. I'll give them that. By summer, 8 months after diagnosis, my PSA levels had dropped to near undetectable. Dr. Mosley used the phrase favorable response. She's careful with language. She doesn't throw around words like remission the way people throw around words like it's what Mom would have wanted. But she was smiling when she said it, and Dr. Mosley does not smile lightly. I drove directly from that appointment to Pauline's porch and knocked on her door. She opened it, took one look at my face, and burst into tears. You stubborn old man, she said, which is among the finest things anyone has said to me in recent memory, and I have decided to put it on my headstone. We sat on her porch with sweet tea and an entire plate of her praline cookies, and I ate every single one of them without an ounce of guilt, because I had just beaten cancer more or less unassisted, and I felt I had earned the pralines. 2 years after diagnosis, I was cancer-free. Life had become something I hadn't expected. It was good. Not the way it was good with Miriam. Nothing would ever be that again, and I've made my peace with that particular absence. But it was genuinely, quietly good. I had Pauline. I had Harry in the Thursday group. I had Margaret Simons from church, who runs a care network with the efficiency of a military logistics operation, and the warmth of someone who actually means it. I was sleeping through the night. I'd started walking along the river in the mornings, past the old cotton warehouses and the tourists and the oak trees draped in their moss. I had built something. Daniel and I exchanged perhaps 14 text messages over those 2 years. Birthdays, holidays, the kind of exchanges that are technically contact and emotionally nothing. He did not ask about my health. I did not volunteer it. We were, in the language of modern estrangement, in touch. The updated will sat quietly in Patricia Delacroix's files, doing nothing, meaning everything, and was about to know just how much it meant. The call came at 9:40 in the morning on a Tuesday in October, almost exactly 2 years from the parking garage, which I note not because I believe in cosmic poetry, but because the universe does occasionally have a flair for the dramatic. I was making grits, real grits, not the instant kind which Miriam always said were an offense against God and the state of Georgia. Daniel's name on the screen, not a text, an actual phone call. I stood there and looked at it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. I let it ring 3 times, not out of spite. I want to be clear about that, but because I was stirring grits, and grits do not wait for anyone. Daniel, Dad. His voice was wrong, thick, unsteady, the polished smoothness gone, replaced by something rawer. Dad, I need to tell you something. I was in an accident 2 weeks ago on I-16 coming back from a work thing. A truck lost control on the interchange. It was bad, really bad. Are you all right? And I meant it. Whatever existed between us, this was my son, and something older than resentment answered before I could weigh in. 3 broken ribs, fractured shoulder, internal bruising. I was in the hospital for 5 days. I'm home now, but I can't drive. I can barely get up the stairs. I can't cook. I can't lift anything. I can't. He stopped, the sound of a man swallowing something too large. Dad, Elise left 4 days after I got home. She said she didn't sign up to be a caregiver. She said it wasn't what she imagined her life being. She packed 2 suitcases, called a car, and texted me from the Uber that she'd be in touch about the condo. I set the wooden spoon down across the pot, a text. After 18 months of marriage, after the restored antebellum plantation in Bluffton, and the gold foil invitations and the $40,000 my son had asked me to contribute to the spectacle. After all of that, a text from an Uber. I will confess that a small, quiet, uncharitable part of me noted the particular justice of this sequence of events. I did not say that part aloud. I am 70, not 20. I know when to keep things to myself. Daniel, I'm sorry. That's a terrible thing to go through. Dad, I don't have anyone. His voice broke. Fully, completely broke. The first time I'd heard my son cry since his dog died when he was 11 years old. My work friends checked in for a few days and then nothing. I can't do anything for myself. I've been ordering delivery food for 10 days. He stopped again. Dad, I need you to come. Can you come stay for a while? Just until I get back on my feet. You're retired. You've got the flexibility. And Dad, I really need someone right now. There it was. I need someone right now. The kitchen was quiet. The grits were thickening. Outside on Oleander Street, the late morning was doing what Savannah mornings do. Warm, unhurried, indifferent to human suffering. I thought about the parking garage on Montgomery Street. I thought about the beige walls of Dr. Annan's examination room and the smiling man on the laminated poster. I thought about 53 radiation appointments. I thought about Harry Coleman's Priest and Pelican joke, which is genuinely the longest joke I have ever heard and ends with a punchline that doesn't entirely make sense, and which I would not trade for anything. I thought about the Christmas card with the golden retriever and the Santa hat. I thought about the $40,000 for the antebellum plantation. It's what Mom would have wanted. I thought about Dr. Mosley early in treatment, when the fatigue had bottomed me out and the isolation was beginning to feel like a physical weight. She'd said, Walter, I need you to hear this. Stress is measurable documented effects on treatment outcomes. Protect your peace like it is medicine, because right now it is. Protect your peace like it is medicine. I took a breath. Daniel, I said, I can't deal with this right now. Complete silence. 4 words. His words returned. Not shouted, not dripping with theatrical irony. Just said, quietly, in the same even register he'd used 2 Octobers ago when I was sitting alone in a parking garage with a cancer diagnosis and shaking hands and a son who had venue deposits to worry about. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Dad. I have things going on, I continued, my voice perfectly calm. I have my routines, my appointments, my people. I've built a life down here, Daniel, while you were busy building yours, and I'm not in a position to drop it on a Tuesday morning phone call. You. He stopped, started again. Are you serious right now? I was in a serious accident. I have broken ribs. My wife left me. I have nobody. And you're saying you can't come? I'm saying I can't deal with this right now, I said, which I believe you'll recognize as a reasonable position. A beat of silence. And then, to his credit, and I will give him this credit because, again, fairness matters, he understood what I'd just done. I could hear it land, the recognition of his own words in someone else's mouth. After 2 years of traveling. Dad, I deserved that. You did, I agreed. But I'm still hurt. I still need help. I know. I said, I know exactly what that feels like. Another silence. Longer. What does that mean? It means I spent 8 months in cancer treatment without a single phone call from you, Daniel. It means I drove myself to radiation appointments. It means my neighbor, a woman I barely knew, left food on my porch twice a week because she chose to show up when she had no obligation to. It means your Christmas card had a golden retriever on it, and that retriever communicated more warmth than anything else I received from you that year. The silence that followed was a different kind, not calculating, something more like sitting down after a long walk. Dad, I didn't. I didn't know it was that bad. No, you didn't, because you didn't ask. I heard him exhale. Something shaky in it. I have to tell you something else, I said. And I'm telling you now because I believe you deserve to know it, and because honesty is the only currency I'm willing to trade in at this point in my life. When you called to ask me to contribute $40,000 to your wedding, I updated my will. A very long pause. You? What? Completely. I called Patricia Delacroix the day after that phone call. The house, the savings, the investments, none of it goes to you, Daniel. It goes to Pauline Hayes, to the Men's Group Benevolence Fund, to the Anderson Cancer Institute, and to Margaret Simons's care network at First Baptist. The people who showed up. That's where it goes. The silence this time was not a pause. It was a room. Dad, I'm not telling you this to wound you. I'm telling you because you called me asking for help. And I think you should understand the full picture of what the last 2 years have looked like from where I'm standing. The full picture, Daniel repeated slowly. He sounded like a man trying to locate solid ground. Dad, I was 29 when Mom died. I was overwhelmed. I made bad choices. I know that. But you're telling me that's already done? It is. And nothing I do changes that. I considered the grits which had reached the exact consistency Miriam would have approved of. I turned off the burner. No, I said, nothing you do changes that. That decision was made with a clear head and a clear heart, and I'm at peace with it. I'm not telling you to punish you. I'm telling you because it's true. And I've decided to only deal in truth from here forward. So what am I supposed to do with that? Whatever you need to, I said. That's the work. Now let me tell you what I did not do. I did not call Margaret Simons on his behalf. I did not phone his work friends or research home aid agencies in whatever part of Atlanta Daniel has occupied for the past 4 years. I did not, in short, do what I might once have done, which is to say, absorb the consequences of his choices, cushion the landing, and send him back out into the world with the impression that someone would always be there to catch him. I told him clearly that I would not be coming. I told him clearly that the will had been changed and why. And then I said, I hope you find the help you need. I genuinely mean that. But that help is not going to come from me. He tried twice more. The first was a text, sent the evening of that same Tuesday. Dad, I know I wasn't there for you the way I should have been, but I'm asking you to be the bigger person here. I need help. The request to be the bigger person, issued by the person who had, over the prior 2 years, been comprehensively the smaller one, is a classic maneuver. I've seen it in contract negotiations. I've seen it in HOA disputes. It never gets less audacious. I read it, set my phone down, and went back to the documentary I was watching about the construction of the Panama Canal, which held my attention far more reliably. The second was a voicemail, left 3 days later. His voice was composed, which told me the therapy was doing something. He said he understood why I'd made the choices I'd made. He said he wasn't calling to argue about the will. He said he just wanted me to know that he was sorry. Not performatively, not strategically, but actually sorry. And that if I ever wanted to talk, he was there. I listened to it twice. It was a good voicemail. I'll say that. It was the most honest thing Daniel had said to me since he was 19 years old, and admitted he'd put a dent in my truck, and then lied about it for 4 months. I did not call back. I thought about calling back. On a Wednesday morning, about 2 weeks later, I sat on the back porch with my coffee, and I thought about it seriously. I thought about who Daniel was at 11, before he became who he became. I thought about teaching him to fish off the dock at Tybee Island, and the summer he got obsessed with building model bridges, the son of a civil engineer, what else, and would spread the pieces across the dining room table for days at a time. I thought about how he'd cried at Miriam's funeral, in a way he clearly hadn't planned to, the kind of crying that ambushes you, and how I'd put my hand on his back and felt how young he still was beneath all the adult architecture. I thought about all of that, and then I thought about the parking garage on Montgomery Street, the beige walls, the ADT, the Christmas card with the golden retriever, the request for $40,000 delivered in the same breath as it's what Mom would have wanted. And I went inside and poured a second cup of coffee and called Pauline, who was attempting to grow lemongrass for the first time, and wanted my opinion on soil drainage, which I was happy to provide. Some doors, once you've looked clearly at what's on the other side, don't need to be reopened. That's not bitterness. That's not a performance. That's just a man, at 70, deciding what he has the energy for and what he doesn't. and having the particular freedom that comes from having survived something that nearly killed him and built something worth keeping on the other side of it. Here is what I want to say to you, if you're still with me. We are raised, many of us, particularly those of us raised in the South, where family loyalty is practically a contact sport, to believe that blood is not merely thicker than water but thicker than evidence, thicker than behavior, thicker than the repeated and documented choices of grown adults who have been given every opportunity to do better. We are told that forgiveness is unconditional, that love means showing up regardless of what someone has done with your previous showing up. That family is family, full stop, no footnotes. I want to respectfully suggest that this is nonsense, not the love part, the unconditional part. Real love, the durable, honest, self-respecting kind, requires that the people you love be held accountable to you, the same way you are held accountable to them. A relationship where only one person absorbs consequence is not a relationship. It's a service arrangement. And the person providing the service is not the one being honored by it. They're just the one being used. When Daniel told me he couldn't deal with my cancer diagnosis because he had venue deposits, he was not having a bad day. He was showing me a fully formed value system. His comfort, his timing, his priorities above mine, in a moment when mine were legitimately in crisis. That is not a mistake. That is a choice. Repeated choices become character. Character is what you actually have to live with. The boundary I drew was not revenge. I want to be precise about this. Handing his words back to him in the parking garage, "I can't deal with this right now," was not a calculated act of cruelty. It was the simplest form of honesty. It was me saying, "I am going to treat you the way you have chosen to treat me, and I am going to let you feel what that feels like, because feeling it is the only way it means anything." The will was not revenge either. The will was clarity. The will was me looking at the evidence. Not assumptions, not projections, not the hopeful version of Daniel I'd been carrying around since he was 11 years old building model bridges on the dining room table, but the actual documented record of his choices, and deciding that the people who had shown up for me deserved more than a placeholder in my affairs. Pauline Hayes showed up with a cast-iron pot of soup when she barely knew my name. Harry Coleman drove 40-minute round trips twice a week for months, telling jokes that probably constitute a mild form of psychological warfare, because he decided that was what you do. Margaret Simons organized the entire infrastructure of my recovery with the efficiency of a military operation, because that's what the community of First Baptist does. These people didn't love me because they had to. They loved me because they chose to. And in my experience, chosen love is worth more than obligated love by a considerable margin. There is a difference between punishing someone and protecting yourself. I was done explaining that difference to Daniel. I was done being the structure that holds while someone else decides whether to invest in the foundation. I had survived stage 3 prostate cancer, 14 months of widowhood before that, and 41 years of life in a city that does not suffer fools gladly, even when those fools are draped in Spanish moss and antebellum charm. I had earned the right to my own peace. I had paid for it in full. It's been 5 months since that phone call. I am still cancer-free. Dr. Mosley confirmed it at my last quarterly. PSA levels so low they barely register, which she describes as excellent, and which I describe as a personal triumph over my own cellular insubordination. My mornings look like this: up at 6:30, grits on the stove, coffee on the porch, river walk by 8. The oak trees on the squares are doing what they always do: slow, vast, unbothered by whatever the rest of us are up to. I find that instructive. Pauline and I have started a Thursday evening thing. Dinner on her porch or mine, depending on who has cooked what and who wants to eat it. She is teaching me to grow herbs, a project she describes as ambitious given your history with plants, which is fair. Harry Coleman continues to tell jokes of questionable construction and impeccable timing. Margaret Simons recently organized a neighborhood care drive that fed 40 families in 3 days, which I helped coordinate, and which reminded me why I live in this city. I have not heard from Daniel since the voicemail. I think about him sometimes. I think about whether he found help. I think about whether the therapy is continuing, whether he's eating actual food, whether he's learned anything from a year that gave him a great deal to learn from. I think about him the way you think about a country you used to live in, with some fondness for what was true there, and no particular desire to move back. Some people receive a mirror and look into it and change. Some people receive a mirror, look into it, and immediately start rearranging the furniture so they don't have to see their reflection anymore. I don't know which kind Daniel is. I suspect at 70 that I don't have the time to wait and see. What I have is this: a house on Oleander Street in Savannah, Georgia, full of Miriam's handwriting on recipe cards and her laughter in photographs. A porch, sweet tea in the afternoons, a river I walk past every morning, people who chose me. Last week, Pauline came over on a Thursday evening with a bottle of muscadine wine and the information that the lemongrass had finally taken root. We sat on the back porch until the fireflies came out. Savannah fireflies, which are dramatic about it, appearing all at once like someone threw a switch. And we didn't talk about anything important, and it was one of the better evenings I can remember. At some point, Pauline said, of nothing in particular, "Walter, you look like a man who's figured something out." I thought about that for a moment. "I think," I said, "I've just stopped waiting for a permission slip." I raised mine. The fireflies kept at it, completely unbothered. "I'm Walter Graves. I'm 70 years old. I live in Savannah, Georgia. I beat cancer, I buried my wife with my hand in hers, and I built something true from the wreckage. The will is filed, the grits are on the stove, the river is right where I left it. I am, to put it plainly, just fine." If you like this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories.